Hello folks, and welcome to Paddock Pass, sort of a little look back over the week of car launches as pre-season testing begins today. Thank you for joining us for the launches of the cars as they happened over the week. We've seen some really interesting designs from all the teams as 2017 gets a massive technical regulation shake-up. Almost every team doing something differently, and it's going to be fascinating to see which teams have got it absolutely spot on, which have missed the mark, and which teams are going to be ultra competitive going into this new season. But as you see behind me, and as you've been seeing all the way through the week, certainly very different looking cars in 2017. We started, of course, on Monday with the launch of the Sauber, just a sort of a virtual launch of that. The first car that we'd actually seen this season was the Williams, although it was just a virtual render that we saw online. The first physical cars that we saw launched, though, were the Renault. We were there in London for that, followed up by the Force India the next day at Silverstone. Very interesting nose on that one, as we discussed at the time. The next day, the world champions Mercedes released the car they hope will bring them another pair of world championships. Then Friday morning, Ferrari released this one online before we saw the physical representation of McLaren over there at Woking. And then over the weekend, the rest of the cars were unveiled. First, the Haas was unveiled in Barcelona, then the Red Bull, then its sister team Toro Rosso with a sparkly new livery. That's leaving us with a full complement of cars, as of course we don't have Manor anymore. Now there's a lot of talk, of course, about two of the main interesting design features that we've seen on all the cars this year. One at the front, one at the back. The one at the front, stub noses. Why are we seeing so many stub noses? Well, you may remember a few years ago when the last big technical regulation hit and we saw those really long noses on the cars. The regulations were changed a couple of years after that, leaving us with these stub noses, and the reason for it is quite simple, and it's all to do with the FIA's crash testing procedure. Essentially, the front end of the car, the tip of the car, has to be 8,000 millimeters squared. There is, though, a secondary point, 100 millimeters or 10 centimeters behind that, which has to be 20,000 millimeters squared. Those are your two impact points, your two crash structures on the car. And so the majority of teams have opted for this stub nose, believing that to be the most efficient use of space and also aerodynamically to be the most efficient way of getting airflow around that nose. That's why you have the short stub, and then in most cases, Force India not quite so, 10 centimeters back, that larger area. Just the Mercedes and the Toro Rosso as the only cars not to go with that stub nose this year. They're more sort of rounded on the front, but still with that 8,000 millimeter to 20,000 millimeter squared areas separated by the 100 millimeter length backwards. The other thing at the back of the car is the shark fin. A lot of people saying, why are we seeing the shark fins back when we got rid of them in that last regulation change? Well, we first saw them, and particularly in this design that we see on the Sauber, sweeping back when they were actually attached to the rear wings around about 2008, when we saw the F-ducts coming into Formula One. In order to ban F-ducts, in order to stop the teams from physically being able to do that, the FIA mandated that there is this little patch here, it changes just a patch here between the rear of the car and the rear wing, where no bodywork is allowed, to stop it from actually attaching to that rear wing. But that doesn't mean that that area there can't be manipulated or used. And in this case, in this year, the teams have decided to do so. The reasoning is quite simple. The rear wing, as you'll see, is much lower, much wider. And because it comes so low compared to the rest of the car, the disrupted airflow over the car and also from that airbox there means that if you didn't have a means of cleaning up the airflow to the rear wing, you're going to get really disrupted airflow to the rear wing. So those shark fins are there purely to clean up the airflow as it rolls back, hits that, clean it up, push it back over to the rear wing, and hopefully make that rear wing as effective as they're all hoping it will be. So that's your cars as you've seen launched. Friday morning when we got to McLaren, though, we had just seen the online launch of this year's Ferrari.
Okay, Seb, I realize it's still very early day and the condition now they were ideal today, but we probably have some comment and something they want to share about the way this car behaves.
Well, you can see it's a step forward. You can feel it's a step forward. So it's fun to drive. Obviously, the car is quite big and looks quite, strong from the outside. But also the first impression is the right one. So as you can see, the conditions are not how they are going to be in Australia. But today we didn't have any problems. So it was a good day and a good start.
Kimi, I know it's very early day. You just have one lap on this car, but how does it feel like driving?
Well, obviously we don't go full speed. It's a lap and very first lap with the new car, so all felt okay. And obviously it's just the first touch, and we get some more today. But really the main work starts and with testing in Barcelona. But so far so good, and we go from here.
How does the cockpit feel, driving position?
Well, it feels pretty similar than last year. Obviously there's just few changes, but not awful lot different.
So the Ferrari SF70H, the car the team hopes will take it back not just to race-winning ways, but championship contention. 70 standing for its 70th year of competition, H standing for hybrid. As with all the cars, the front wing, incredibly intricate, stub nose, as we've seen on so many of the other cars. Points of interest, though, for me, tiny little boomerang wings on the side of the tub. Towards the bottom here, that double barge board setup, really, really intricate, really fascinating. The sweeping white one into the larger red one just on the side there. But the thing that's got everybody talking are the side pods. If you look at it from the front, the side pods actually come in higher than the suspension, very wide, but at the same time, very shallow aperture there, just allowing the air into the side pods. And a really intricate working of turning vanes and winglets just off the side there. The other interesting thing, when we saw the Mercedes launch, later in the day when Valtteri Bottas got in the car, the team attached a T-wing to the back of the car. Now on Ferrari's launch car, they've actually got a T-wing on the back of the shark fin engine cover. So that's something that has... pardon me, all of the teams talking. So that's the car Ferrari hopes will take them back to championship contention. Then we had the McLaren launched, obviously, and then we got into the weekend and the cars being launched on site in Barcelona. And the first one of those was the Haas. So there's Haas's second Formula One car. It's quite a pretty design. There's a lot of work gone into it, clearly. A lot of time in the wind tunnel as well. Wind shear sponsorship on the front wing has got everybody talking. As has the shark fin at the back. The nice detailing on there, which lends itself a little bit, I guess, to some of the designs we've seen in the World Endurance Championship, particularly from Audi. I guess that's the way you have to go if your car's main colours are grey, black, red and white. Would have been nice to see it on the rest of the car, but anyway, lots of people saying we might see a Stars and Stripes on there around Austin time. In terms of the overall design of the car, it's a really nice design overall, some real intricacy in the barge boards here. Interestingly, it's the only car that I've seen anyway that has such a simple airbox, and the fact it has only one method of intake there has suggested to some people that Ferrari's power unit no longer uses that airbox intake for the intercooler. So some interesting design points on that, and also looking at the nose there, a lot of people have said that looks an awful lot like Ferrari's 2016 nose. Coincidence? Who knows? But overall, quite a tidy little car for Haas's second year in Formula One. No sooner had this car been launched, however, than one of the real big boys dropped their latest car, and that is the car that belongs to Red Bull Racing.
Goals I've personally set myself for this year is to be on the top step again, you know, and I guess the goal is to be on the top step enough times that come, you know, October, November, it's put me in a fight for a title. That's the real goal. Sure, there's going to be some things different, you know, with us as drivers. We're going to, you know, the car's going to feel a lot different, I think, and you know, more physical, but as a show, as far as the racing goes, if it's going to be closer, more intense, to be seen in a few months, I guess. I think the cars will be harder to drive, probably on two sides. You know, on a physical side, we're going to go faster, so it's going to take more energy from us, and I think more strength. You know, we've been given a little bit of room to put on some weight over the off season, I think all of us, so you know, it's to put on a little bit of muscle to withstand, you know, the high G forces that we're going to have. So that's where that kind of fits in. And I think, you know, if we're lapping at a quicker pace, then, you know, things are coming at you faster. You know, the corners, you know, obviously the faster you go, the quicker corners approach you. And even with racing, you know, if you're racing another car, you might have to respond or react quicker and be more responsive. So I think from that side as well, it could be more difficult, more challenging. Fortunately, I'm still young, so my eyes can keep up with things coming at me fast.
I first want to see how competitive the car is, and then I can be more precise in my goals. I mean, of course, I always want to win races, but you know, you need to have the right equipment for that as well. I think hopefully, you know, it mixes up a bit more the grid. That's always good, I think, for Formula One in general, but hopefully for us as well. And then from there on, hopefully closer racing, less degradation when you're behind someone from the tires, so you can push a bit harder behind someone else, you know, for a few more laps. So yeah, I think I'm just looking forward to that. I think it will be quite a lot more physical on your neck because the cornering speeds, they're quite a lot higher. I think up to 20-30 kilometers in a corner. So yeah, we did quite a lot of training to get prepared. Hopefully it's enough. I mean, you never know for sure. You know, the first test or two test weeks, yeah, you will feel a bit sore because you can train what you want. You know, you can get a lot stronger, but always the first time you jump in the car, you just get a stiff neck. So you just have to deal with it. But hopefully, you know, for the rest of the season, it will be good enough.
The RB13, as they've said in their promotional material, 13 unlucky for some. Will it be unlucky for Red Bull? Will it be unlucky for the rest of the teams out there? If you find anybody who tells you that this is the car that we're going to see in Australia, I will show you a liar. I cannot believe that this will be the Red Bull that we see there. It's so simple as to be almost incredible. But the one thing that has really caught everybody's eye is the nose and that opening there. Like Garindan from Star Wars, the spy with the big long black nose in the original Star Wars, A New Hope. That's the geek in me. Some people have said it looks like Pingu when he... some people have said it looks like Nunu from the Teletubbies, whatever. And it is an opening. It's not a bulk at the front. It is an opening. We believe now, having seen it in testing today, that the opening actually is at the rear here. There's no venting through. Is that true? Who knows? Honestly, who knows? But they're not going to put it there unless it has some magic ability to do something fantastic to the car. And I think what's really interesting with that, as with so many of the intricate and interesting design points that we've seen on all the other cars, is that these are not going to be easy things for other teams to copy should they prove to be that magic bullet for the season. That's what's really interesting about 2017. Nobody's going to be able to just look at something and say, well, that works on their car, we need to put it on ours, because the intricacy with which it is an integral part of that design is quite evident. An S-duct, quite a bulky S-duct on the Red Bull. We've seen S-ducts on quite a few cars this year. But again, just going back over it, it's the simplicity in it, in the barge boards, in the turning vanes, in everything around the car, that leads everyone to believe that, yes, okay, we've seen the Red Bull launched, but that ain't the Red Bull that's going to race. And finally, then to Toro Rosso, and a lot of people absolutely loving the new livery. It's the first one that they've run not in that kind of Jackson Pollock-esque paint splat design. It's beautiful, I think, in that royal blue, silver and red. Why they haven't decided to do their overalls in those colours, I don't know, but there you go. But certainly a really interesting new look for Toro Rosso, and a really interesting design. This is a car that they've been working on for a good 18 months, trying to get the jump on people. As last year, of course, they did very little car development, as they had a power unit in the back of their car that they knew was never going to lead to them being competitive, focusing everything on this change of regulations. That kind of idea that first lent itself to Super Aguri way back, and then that rolled over onto the Brawn that allowed them the championship success back in 2009. Toro Rosso were really hoping to come out with something that was going to surprise people. And it's interesting when you see the comments coming out of them yesterday, where James Key and certain team members said, you know what, we're really disappointed that we've got a similar design philosophy to Mercedes. Who says that? Who says that they're disappointed that they've got the same design philosophy as the guys who've just racked up the last goodness knows how many world championships? But it's because they hoped they'd done something different, because they hoped they'd got a march on people. Now, the fact they've got the same design philosophy as Mercedes should hearten them that they, are probably going down the right track, but at the same time, they're disheartened because they're not the only ones who've thought about it. With that in mind, you see the nose very, very similar to Mercedes in terms of that design. The intricacy around the barge boards, again, a point of real interest here, and it's the detail in the Toro Rosso and the amount of time they've been able to spend on the detail that's really fascinating here, particularly around this edge on the barge boards, little winglets kicking out. You can't see because it's hidden behind the rear tyres, but on the rear impact structure, tons of tiny little winglets just trying to get that downforce on the rear, pushing the rear down. It's a really pretty car. There's a lot of thought gone into it, and it's the kind of thing that could spring a surprise when the season starts. I say that, of course, having absolutely no knowledge of the times they're running in Barcelona or what anybody's going to be running, because let's be honest, folks, we don't know anything. These are just launch cars. The majority of them are just renders. We're going to see huge changes to these cars over the next week, in fact the next 2 weeks, as they're running in Barcelona. Already today in testing, we've seen on the Williams not just one T-wing but a double T-wing, one coming off the shark fin, the other coming off the rear wing support structure. We've also seen Mercedes running with their own version of a shark fin. If we look at the shark fin on the Toro Rosso here, Mercedes one comes only to about halfway down there, then cutting in, and it's a little bit bulbous because it features a chimney that will allow a little bit of heat to come out of that engine area there. We are going to see huge development over the next few weeks in all of these cars. What we've seen launched will not be the same as we see at the end of testing. It won't be the same thing that we see in Australia. And as always, we're not going to know who really has that pace until qualifying in Australia. And given the novelty and the difference of the circuit layout in Australia to almost every other circuit we visit over the year, perhaps not even then. It's going to be a really fascinating pre-season. Can't wait to get out to Barcelona and actually see these cars in the flesh. NBC SN are going to be out there for the second week of the test session. So yeah, can't wait to see these things in anger. Already we're hearing today from Barcelona the cars are going quicker around the track than in the last iteration of these cars. Certainly in the hybrid era, they seem to be running faster than we've ever seen them. And anybody standing around turn 2 and 3 say that they are absolutely bolted to the track. So yeah, cannot wait. It's going to be great. That's it. That's what F1 2017 looks like. We'll see you in Barcelona in just a few days' time.